It's the very first book that I have ever written of any kind. I've spent most of my career as a playwright or a screenwriter, and occasionally writing for television, so it's all been dramatic writing. To actually sit down and concentrate and write a book was something very new for me. My wife Valerie, who's a novelist and nonfiction writer, has a background in journalism and editing, and this is a discipline that she is very used to, and so I had someone who could act as a kind of a guide for me, as a role model. I could watch her, and and as I've done for a great deal of our marriage, and would always think, wow, that's too hard. I'm not going to do that. that's too much concentration, But I began to really start working on it. The catalyst for it, I'm going to point the finger at my lawyer, Jay Kramer. Hey, Kermit. Jay Kramer was the one who suggested to me that maybe now is the time to bring the plays that I had written together, and Richard, why don't you do an anthology? And I was like, the plays are a dramatist play service, and if people write to me, they can get it. He said, no, you need to bring the plays together into a critical mass. Let's talk about the work in its entirety. Let's get a perspective on what you've been doing as a writer for the last 4 decades. So I began to move in that direction, and then when Jay and I spoke further about it, he told me how he had been in contact with Applause Books, and Applause Books said, well, yeah, an anthology is nice, but maybe there needs to be another kind of perspective added onto it. Maybe there's another approach that we could make rather than just a collection of plays. And that's how the introduction to the anthology was born. And that introduction gradually grew and it became more like a memoir. Yeah. And my own personal overview of the development of the evolution of the modern age of black theater. From roughly when I was kind of pulled into it, introduced into it in 1964. As I mentioned at the opening of the introduction, I was a sophomore. It was the fall of '64, so yeah, I would have been a sophomore. I was a sophomore at Howard in the drama department, and the then chair of the department, Owen Dotson, usually during the theater season, made it his business every 3 weeks or so to come up to New York to spend the weekend going to the theater. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday matinee, then he would catch the train, get back down to DC and be ready for class on Monday. And one particular week he came back and basically said that he had seen the most extraordinary play he had seen in quite a few years. And he was very proud of the fact that it was written by one of his former students. And he said, well, the language is rather caustic, and I'll have to talk with the dean and the president of the university to see if we can actually get permission to do this play, because there's a lot of very, very, very difficult language in there, and I'll have to really discuss this with them. They'll probably refuse But I'll get them, I'll convince them. And the following spring, we did the first production of The Dutchman in Washington, D.C. And that was my introduction also to Leroy Jones, later becoming Mary Baraka. He came down to see the play, and that actually was the beginning of a friendship that lasted from then right up until Amiri's passing a couple of years ago.